I'm Amber Sullivan, 32, standing in my $10 million Malibu villa overlooking the Pacific. The ocean breeze carries the scent of success, but today I'm savoring something sweeter. My stepmom Patricia just walked into my charity fundraiser and literally froze, champagne glass slipping from her fingers. After years of betrayal and abandonment, after they took everything and left me with nothing, the look on her face when she realized whose home she'd entered was worth every tear I ever shed. Revenge isn't just a dish best served cold, it's exquisite when served at a charity gala. Before I dive into my story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. And if you've ever experienced family betrayal or risen above difficult circumstances, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over adversity. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in a modest, comfortable home in suburban Chicago. My childhood was relatively normal and happy until I was 10 when my mother was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. She fought hard for 3 years, but in the end, the disease took her from us. My father, Richard, and I were devastated, clinging to each other through the grief. For a while, it was just Dad and me against the world. He worked as a civil engineer, and I focused on school, both of us trying to rebuild our lives around the gaping hole Mom's absence had left. When I was 13, everything changed again. Dad met Patricia at a colleague's dinner party. She was attractive, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in both of us. Within 6 months, they were married. "Amber, I want you to meet Jessica," Patricia said during their first week of marriage, introducing her 16-year-old daughter. "I just know you two are going to be the best of sisters." Jessica offered me a tight smile that never reached her eyes. From that moment, I knew we wouldn't be friends, let alone sisters. While Patricia maintained a facade of warmth around my father, Jessica didn't bother hiding her contempt. "This is my house now," she whispered to me that very night, when our parents were out of earshot. "And you're just the leftover baggage my mom has to deal with." I tried telling Dad about Jessica's behavior, but Patricia always had an explanation ready. "Richard, the girls are just adjusting. Amber's at that difficult age, and she's still grieving her mother. Jessica's just feeling insecure about the new family dynamics." Slowly but surely, Patricia began changing my father. The man who had always put me first, who had checked my homework every night and attended every school play, became increasingly distant. Patricia made sure they had date nights, weekend getaways, and private conversations that excluded me. She became the gatekeeper to my own father. The first major betrayal came when I was 16. I had always been academically gifted, taking advanced courses and dreaming of attending Northwestern University, my mother's alma mater. My parents had started a college fund for me when I was born, and despite financial strains after Mom's medical bills, Dad had managed to keep it intact. One evening, I overheard Patricia and Dad arguing in their bedroom. "Richard, Jessica needs this opportunity. Westlake Academy will give her the connections and education she needs to succeed. Her grades have improved so much since we moved here." "But that's Amber's college fund, Patricia. Mary and I saved that money specifically for Northwestern. It was Mary's dream to see her daughter attend her alma mater." "Mary is gone, Richard," Patricia said coldly. "And Amber can get scholarships or attend community college first. She's smart enough. Jessica needs this now." The next day, Dad avoided looking me in the eye when he told me they'd be using my college fund to send Jessica to an exclusive private high school. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "But Dad, that's the money you and Mom saved for Northwestern," I said, fighting back tears. "I know, sweetie, but we need to think about what's best for the whole family now. Jessica is struggling at her current school, and this is a great opportunity for her. You're so smart, you'll get scholarships. Well, figure something out when the time comes." But we never did figure something out. While Jessica drove to her expensive private school in a new car, Patricia convinced Dad to buy her for her 17th birthday, I continued at public school, taking the bus and watching my future dreams crumble. The isolation grew worse. Family dinners became opportunities for Patricia and Jessica to discuss their day, their friends, their plans, while I sat silently. If I spoke about my achievements making honor roll again, being selected for a competitive science program, Patricia would quickly change the subject or Jessica would roll her eyes and make a sarcastic comment. Not everyone can be Little Miss Perfect like Amber. Became her favorite phrase, dripping with disdain. My 18th birthday marked the final fracture. Dad had always made birthdays special, with pancakes for breakfast and thoughtful gifts that showed how well he knew me. That morning I came downstairs to find no pancakes, no card. Dad was rushing out the door to a meeting. "Sorry, Amber. We'll celebrate this weekend," he promised, not meeting my eyes. That weekend, Patricia arranged a family emergency at her sister's house 3 hours away. My birthday was never acknowledged. That night, alone in my room, I made a decision. The father I knew was gone, replaced by a man who had chosen his new family over his daughter. The painful truth settled in my heart. I was now truly alone. "I'll make it on my own," I whispered to a photo of my mother. "I'll show them all what I'm capable of." Little did I know just how dramatically that promise would unfold. After high school graduation, I moved into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates while attending community college. I worked as a barista in the mornings, took classes in the afternoon, and waited tables at night. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford, but I was determined to build my own future without anyone's help. During my second year of community college, I received a call from our family doctor. Dad had been experiencing memory issues and confusion at work, and after a series of tests, had been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's disease. He was only 52. Despite everything that had happened, he was still my father. I immediately went to see him, bringing along some old photo albums to help us reconnect. Patricia opened the door, her smile vanishing when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. "Dr. Mendez called me about Dad's diagnosis. I came to see him." She blocked the doorway. "Richard is resting. This is a difficult time for our family." "I am his family too," I insisted, my voice breaking. "Please, Patricia, he's my father." After a tense standoff, she reluctantly let me in. Dad was sitting in his armchair, staring out the window. When he turned and saw me, confusion crossed his face before recognition dawned. "Amber? Is that you?" For a brief moment my old dad was back, his eyes lighting up as I showed him photos from when I was little. We laughed over memories of a beach vacation when I was 7, and he even remembered the name of my imaginary friend. Patricia hovered nearby, clearly annoyed by our connection. After that visit, I tried to become a regular presence again, hoping to rebuild some kind of relationship with my father while he could still remember me. But Patricia had other plans. 3 weeks later, I arrived for a scheduled visit to find the locks changed. When I rang the doorbell, Jessica answered. "Mom and Dad aren't home," she said with a smirk, using the word dad deliberately to hurt me. "We had an appointment. I was supposed to take him to the park today. Plans changed. Mom thinks your visits are too disruptive to his routine. They cause him anxiety." I called and left messages, but Patricia never returned them. When I finally reached her, she was icy. "Richard's condition is deteriorating, and consistency is crucial now. Your sporadic visits confuse him. It's better if you stay away for a while." "Has my father?" I said, my voice shaking with anger and grief. "You can't keep me from seeing him." "Actually, I can. I have medical power of attorney now, and his doctors agree that minimizing disruption is best for his health." I tried reasoning, begging, even threatening legal action, but as his spouse, Patricia held all the cards. 6 months later, during one of my rare permitted visits, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Passing by Patricia's home office, I noticed a stack of legal documents on her desk. The top page caught my eye. Last Will and Testament of Richard James Sullivan. My heart pounding, I quickly scanned the document. Dad had changed his will, leaving everything to Patricia, with a small trust for Jessica. My name appeared nowhere in the document. The date on the will was just 3 weeks after his diagnosis, when he was still legally competent but vulnerable and confused. I took photos of the documents with my phone, then continued to the bathroom, my hands shaking. When I returned to the living room, Patricia was watching me with narrow eyes. Looking for something, Amber. The knowing look on her face told me she'd deliberately left those papers out for me to find. How could you do this? I whispered. Has not even gone, and you're already taking everything from me, even my memories of him. Richard made his choices, she said coldly. He chose us. Maybe if you'd been a better daughter, things would be different. Jessica walked in, settling herself possessively next to my father. Is there a problem, Mom? No problem. Amber was just leaving. And I think it's better if she doesn't come back. These emotional scenes upset your father. You can't keep me from my own father, I said, my voice rising. Dad looked up, confused and distressed by the tension. Please don't fight, he said, his voice small. Patricia placed a hand on his shoulder. See what you're doing, Amber? This is exactly why these visits are a bad idea. She walked me to the door, speaking quietly. Stay away, or I'll get a restraining order. I'll tell the court you're causing him psychological harm. You'll never see him again. Outside on the porch, she delivered her final blow. He barely remembers you anyway. In his confused state, he sometimes thinks Jessica is his only daughter. The door closed in my face as tears streamed down my cheeks. Through the window, I could see Jessica smirking at me, her arm around my father's shoulders. He looked confused, vulnerable, and completely under their control. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter from Patricia's attorney informing me that I was no longer welcome at the Sullivan residence and that any attempts to contact Richard Sullivan would result in legal action. I had one last conversation with my father. I called when I knew Patricia would be at her yoga class, and by some miracle, Dad answered the phone. For a few precious minutes, he was lucid, recognizing my voice immediately. Amber, sweetheart, I miss you. I miss you too, Dad. So much. Something's not right here, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Patricia keeps telling me you don't want to see me. That's not true, is it? No, Dad. She's keeping me away. Shay's changed the locks, threatened legal action. I thought so, he said, and I could hear the old determination in his voice. I'll fix this, Amber, I promise. But he never got the chance. His condition deteriorated rapidly, and 8 months later, he was gone. At the funeral, Patricia and Jessica stood front and center, accepting condolences as the grieving family. I stood alone at the back, treated like a stranger by the funeral director who didn't even realize I was the deceased's daughter. When I approached the casket to say goodbye, Patricia gave me a cold stare. You got what you wanted, I whispered to her. I hope it was worth it. It was, she replied without hesitation. And there's nothing you can do about it now. As I walked away from my father's grave, I realized I'd lost everything. My mother, my father, my home, my inheritance, and any semblance of family. I was 21 years old and completely alone in the world. The next 2 years were the hardest of my life. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with unreliable heating, working multiple jobs while finishing my associate's degree. I transferred to a state university on a partial scholarship, supplementing it with student loans and continuing to work nearly full-time. I was exhausted, lonely, and still grieving, but I refused to give up. I chose to major in computer science with a minor in healthcare administration, inspired by the frustrations I'd experienced trying to navigate the healthcare system during both my parents' illnesses. It was during a late shift at a local coffee shop that I met Ryan Cooper. He was in his early 40s, a successful tech entrepreneur who became a regular during my closing shifts. Unlike most customers who barely looked up from their laptops, Ryan always made conversation, asking thoughtful questions about my studies. One night, as I was cleaning up, I overheard him on a video call discussing problems with healthcare data integration. The issue is that patients can't access their own information efficiently across different providers, he was saying. It's all siloed. After his call ended, I hesitantly approached his table. I couldn't help overhearing. I said, I've actually been thinking about this problem for my senior project. What if there was an app that allowed patients to aggregate their own medical information across providers? Ryan's eyes lit up. Tell me more. For the next hour, I outlined my idea for a patient-centered healthcare app. By the time we finished talking, the coffee shop had been closed for 45 minutes, and Ryan was insisting on becoming my mentor. "You have something special, Amber," he said. "Your idea comes from lived experience, not just theory. That gives you insight most tech developers lack." Over the next several months, Ryan helped me refine my concept, introducing me to healthcare professionals and tech developers who provided valuable feedback. I spent every free moment coding prototypes, learning about HIPAA compliance, and researching interoperability standards. My apartment became a workspace, with sticky notes covering every surface. I survived on ramen and coffee, coding late into the night after finishing my shifts and coursework. There were moments when exhaustion overwhelmed me, when I questioned whether I was fooling myself, chasing an impossible dream. During one particularly low moment, I found myself staring at a photo of my parents from before I was born, both of them young and smiling. "I don't know if I can do this," I whispered to their image. "It's too hard." The next day, Ryan called with news that changed everything. He had shown my prototype to a colleague who worked with healthcare startups. "They want to meet you, Amber. They think your app has serious potential." The meeting led to my first seed funding, $50,000 to develop a working prototype. It wasn't much in the tech world, but to me, it was a fortune and, more importantly, validation that my idea had merit. I used the money to hire a part-time developer to help me build a more sophisticated version of the app. We faced countless challenges, ensuring security compliance, creating an intuitive user interface, and developing algorithms to synthesize complex medical information. There were setbacks. Our first attempt at integrating with hospital systems failed. A potential partner backed out at the last minute. The funding was running out faster than anticipated, but there were breakthroughs too. A chance conversation with a frustrated nurse gave me the inspiration to expand the app's functionality to include scheduling and medication management features that would benefit both patients and providers. Ryan's continued belief in me never wavered. "The best entrepreneurs are the ones who keep going when everyone else would quit," he told me during a particularly difficult week. Slowly, the app took shape. We created a system that not only allowed patients to access their records across providers, but also translated complex medical terminology into plain language, tracked medication schedules, and facilitated secure communication between patients and healthcare teams. The true turning point came when a local hospital group agreed to pilot our system. Their chief medical information officer had lost his wife to cancer and immediately saw the value in our patient-centered approach. "If my wife had had access to something like this during her treatment, it would have made a world of difference," he told me, his eyes sincere. The day we signed our first contract, I sat alone in my small apartment, staring at the document that represented everything I'd worked for. "I did it, Mom and Dad," I whispered. "This is just the beginning." I didn't know then just how right I was. Our pilot program with the local hospital group exceeded all expectations. Patient satisfaction scores increased dramatically, medication adherence improved, and the streamlined communication features saved countless hours for medical staff. Word began to spread through the healthcare community about the innovative app created by a young developer who understood both the technical and human sides of healthcare. What truly changed everything, though, was the global health crisis that hit the following year. Suddenly, remote healthcare management wasn't just convenient, it was essential. Our app, which we had named MediConnect, became a critical tool for patients who couldn't physically visit their doctors but needed continuous care. Within months, my small company grew from 3 people working out of a shared office space to 15 employees in our own suite. I barely slept, dividing my time between development meetings, investor calls, and onboarding new healthcare systems. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. Our first $1 million contract came from a regional healthcare network with 30 facilities. I signed the paperwork in a conference room surrounded by executives in expensive suits, then went home to my modest one-bedroom apartment and celebrated alone with a glass of wine and takeout. Success was surreal when there was no one to share it with. I had made a few friends among my employees and within the tech community, but the intensity of building the company left little time for deep connections. Sometimes, in rare quiet moments, I wondered if Patricia or Jessica had heard about my success. My company had been featured in several industry publications, though I doubted they read Healthcare Innovation Quarterly. As demand for our technology grew, it became clear we needed to expand to keep up with market opportunities. After careful research, I decided to relocate the company headquarters to San Francisco, where we would have better access to tech talent and healthcare innovation partners. The move marked a new chapter. I purchased a comfortable condo with a view of the bay, my first real home since leaving Chicago. The company continued to grow, adding new features and partnering with major healthcare systems across the country. It was at a healthcare innovation conference in Los Angeles that I met Michael Bennett. He was a venture capitalist who specialized in healthcare technology, there to scout promising investments. Tall, with warm brown eyes and an easy smile, he approached me after my presentation on patient-centered data integration. "That was impressive," he said, extending his hand. "Your passion for this is obvious, but so is your technical expertise." Over dinner that evening, I found myself sharing not just my business vision but parts of my personal story as well. Michael listened intently, without the pity or awkward discomfort that usually followed my abbreviated account of family estrangement. "You built something meaningful from a place of personal pain," he said. "That's rare and valuable." What started as a professional connection quickly developed into something more. Michael's firm became a major investor in MetaConnect, but our relationship evolved beyond business. He was kind, brilliant, and genuinely supportive of my vision. For the first time since losing my parents, I felt seen and valued for exactly who I was. Our relationship progressed naturally. Weekends spent exploring San Francisco, giving way to longer trips, and eventually moving in together. Michael never tried to replace my lost family, but instead helped me build something new, a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine affection. The business continued its meteoric rise. A major health insurance company integrated our platform nationwide, exponentially expanding our user base. Microsoft approached us about a partnership to enhance their healthcare vertical. Our staff grew to over 100 people across 3 offices. Then came the day that changed everything. We took the company public. The IPO exceeded all projections, closing at 3 times the initial offering price. Overnight, my stake in the company was worth over $50 million. The business press covered the story extensively, with my photograph appearing in the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. One profile piece even mentioned my background, noting how I had worked my way through college after losing both parents. Despite the public attention, not a word came from Patricia or Jessica. No congratulatory email, no reconnection attempt. Their silence spoke volumes about the true nature of their feelings toward me. Even with my name and face in national publications, they chose to maintain the estrangement they had created. The night after the IPO, Michael proposed on the balcony of our condo, the lights of San Francisco twinkling below us. "You're the most remarkable person I've ever known," he said, holding out a ring. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," I said through tears. 1,000 times yes. As I fell asleep that night, my fiancé's arm around me, I realized I had achieved success beyond my wildest dreams. I had a thriving company, financial security, and love. Yet there remained an emotional void, a space where family should have been. The wound of their betrayal had scarred over but never fully healed. Michael and I married 6 months later in a small ceremony on the California coast. His parents, sister, and close friends attended, along with a few of my colleagues who had become friends. It was beautiful and intimate, but I couldn't help noticing the empty spaces where my family should have been. "You're thinking about them, aren't you?" Michael asked gently as we danced at our reception. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to me," he said, holding me closer. "It's okay to miss the idea of what should have been, Amber. It doesn't diminish what we're building together." His understanding was one of the countless reasons I loved him. After our honeymoon in Bali, we returned to house hunting. MediConnect continued to expand, now with offices in 3 cities and partnerships with healthcare systems across the country. Michael had stepped back from his venture capital firm to join my company as Chief Strategy Officer, his business acumen complementing my technical vision perfectly. We found our dream home almost by accident. The realtor had insisted on showing us just one more property at the end of a long day of viewings. The moment we drove through the gates and saw the modern villa perched on a Malibu hillside, overlooking the Pacific Ocean, we both knew. The $10 million price tag would have been unimaginable to me just a few years earlier, but now it represented not just a home but a symbol of everything it accomplished. The villa had 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a home theater, an infinity pool, and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased breathtaking ocean views. As we settled into our new home, I also embarked on another meaningful venture. Remembering my own experience as a child losing a parent, I established the Sullivan Family Foundation, dedicated to supporting children who had lost one or both parents. We provided educational scholarships, grief counseling, and mentorship programs. "This feels right," I told Michael, as we finalized the foundation's mission statement. Taking something painful and transforming it into something that helps others. The foundation quickly became as important to me as my company. I spoke at fundraisers, met with bereaved children, and worked with psychologists to develop effective support programs. For the first time, I spoke publicly about my own experiences with loss and abandonment, finding that sharing my story helped not only the children we served but also my own healing process. Professionally, life continued to exceed all expectations. MediConnect expanded internationally, our technology revolutionizing patient care across continents. I was named to Fortune's 40 Under 40 list and invited to speak at prestigious healthcare and technology conferences worldwide. Yet, despite external success, I still struggled with internal wounds. In the quiet moments, usually late at night when Michael was asleep, I would find myself thinking about my father, wondering if he had moments of clarity before he died, if he realized what Patricia had done. At Michael's suggestion, I started seeing a therapist to address the abandonment issues that still haunted me. "You've achieved incredible things," Dr. Levine said during one session, "but you're still carrying the weight of their betrayal." "I thought success would be enough," I admitted. "That proving them wrong would somehow heal everything." "Revenge is never as satisfying as we hope it will be," she replied. "Have you ever considered reaching out to them?" The thought made my stomach clench. Why would I give them another chance to hurt me? "Not for them," she said. "For you. To truly close that chapter." I considered her words carefully but couldn't bring myself to make contact. The risk felt too great, the potential for reopening old wounds too real. Instead, I channeled my energy into building the life and family I wanted. Michael and I began discussing having children, both excited about starting a family together. "You're going to be an amazing mother," he told me one evening as we sat on our terrace watching the sunset. "You know exactly what children need because you know what it's like to go without it." His faith in me was unwavering, a constant source of strength as I navigated the complexities of my past and future. It was during this period of reflection and forward planning that Michael came home with an interesting piece of information. "I heard something today that might interest you," he said carefully. "Patricia and Jessica Sullivan have apparently moved to Los Angeles." My heart stuttered. "How do you know?" "One of my former colleagues mentioned it. Apparently Jessica is trying to build a career as an influencer or something, and Patricia is working as a real estate agent. They're struggling financially from what I understand. They burned through your father's money pretty quickly." I sat with this information, uncertain how to feel. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction knowing they hadn't prospered from what they'd taken from me. Another part felt a strange sense of closure, knowing they were now in my world rather than the other way around. "Do you want to reach out?" Michael asked. I shook my head. "No. But knowing they're here changes something." That night, lying awake, a plan began to form in my mind. Not a plan for reconciliation, but something else entirely, a way to make a statement without words, to show rather than tell. It wouldn't be about revenge, exactly, but about finally being seen. Michael, I said the next morning over coffee, I think it's time we hosted that charity gala for the foundation. Right here, at our home. He studied my face, understanding dawning in his eyes. You want them to see what you've built, not just see it. I said, my resolve strengthening. I want them to walk right into it without warning. Over the next few weeks, I gathered information. It wasn't difficult. Jessica's attempt at becoming an influencer meant her life was deliberately public. Her Instagram account showed carefully curated images of borrowed designer clothes and staged visits to exclusive locations, but the engagement numbers told the real story. She was failing to gain traction in the crowded influencer marketplace. Through some discreet inquiries, I learned that Patricia had joined Westside Luxury Properties, a real estate firm that catered to wealthy clients in Los Angeles. She specialized in high-end homes but had yet to close any significant deals. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who had schemed to take my father's modest estate was now showing multi-million-dollar properties to people who had earned their wealth. According to their website, she's their newest agent. I told Michael as we looked at the agency's webpage, still trying to break into the luxury market. My plan crystallized. We would host an extravagant charity gala for our foundation at our Malibu villa and invite Westside Luxury Properties, among other real estate firms. The event would be covered by press and social media, showcasing both our home and the foundation's work. Patricia would inevitably be assigned to attend as one of the agency's representatives. Are you sure about this? Michael asked. Seeing them again after all this time might be more painful than you anticipate. I'm sure, I said firmly. This isn't about confrontation or even forgiveness. It's about closing a circle. They cast me out, thinking I would disappear. I want them to see that I didn't just survive, I thrived. We enlisted one of the top event planning firms in Los Angeles, sparing no expense. The theme would be Building New Beginnings, highlighting the foundation's work with bereaved children while showcasing our spectacular home. 200 of the city's most influential people would be invited: business leaders, philanthropists, celebrities who supported our cause, and representatives from luxury service providers, including real estate firms. We want to make sure Westside Luxury Properties sends all their agents. I instructed our event planner. Their whole team should see the foundation's work. I personally supervised every detail of the event preparation. The main level of our home would be transformed with elegant decorations in silver and blue, representing hope and new horizons. Key areas would feature displays about the foundation's work, including stories of children we had helped and scholarships we had provided. In my home office, which would be closed to guests, I created a special display. Photos of my father throughout his life, from his own childhood through our happy years together, ending with the last clear photo of him before his illness took hold. Next to these, I placed mementos from our life together. The baseball head caught at a Cubs game when I was 8, the seashell collection from our last vacation before my mother's illness, his engineering awards that Patricia had discarded and that I'd rescued from storage. This room wasn't for the guests. It was for me a reminder of why I had fought so hard, of the love that had been real before everything fell apart. As the event approached, I made a discovery that added another layer to my plan. Through the foundation's legal team, I obtained copies of my father's estate documents. As I suspected, Patricia and Jessica had mismanaged the inheritance badly, making risky investments and indulging in luxury purchases they couldn't afford. Within 5 years, they had depleted nearly everything, forcing them to downsize repeatedly until they'd finally relocated to Los Angeles in search of more lucrative opportunities. They're living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Burbank. I told Michael after reviewing the investigator's report. Jessica's credit is destroyed, and Patricia has a string of failed investments. Does knowing this change anything for you? He asked. I considered the question carefully. It confirms what I always suspected: they wanted my father's money, not his love. They used him just like they tried to use me. The final piece fell into place when our event planner confirmed that Patricia Sullivan from Westside Luxury Properties had RSVP'd to the gala. She would be attending as one of the firm's representatives, completely unaware of whose home she would be entering. The night before the event, I stood in our bedroom, looking out at the moonlight reflecting off the Pacific Ocean. Tomorrow would bring a confrontation years in the making. Not a confrontation of words necessarily, but of realities. My reality versus the future they had tried to deny me. "Are you nervous?" Michael asked, joining me at the window. "Not nervous," I said. "Ready." The morning of the gala, I woke before sunrise. Sleep had been elusive, my mind cycling through memories and rehearsing possible scenarios for the evening ahead. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Michael, and made my way to the terrace to watch the sun rise over the ocean. The peaceful scene contrasted sharply with the turmoil in my mind. Memories surfaced unbidden. My 16th birthday, when Dad had forgotten our traditional pancake breakfast because Patricia had scheduled an early golf game. Jessica smirking as she drove away in the car that should have been mine. Standing alone at my father's funeral while Patricia played the grieving widow. Each memory strengthened my resolve about the evening ahead. "There you are," Michael said, joining me with 2 cups of coffee. "How are you feeling?" "Determined," I answered, accepting the coffee gratefully. This isn't just about them seeing me. It's about me finally seeing myself through new eyes, not as the abandoned daughter, but as someone who built something meaningful despite them. By 9 o'clock, our home was a flurry of activity. The event staff arrived to transform our already beautiful villa into a showcase worthy of a magazine spread. Crystal chandeliers were installed over the outdoor dining area. Florists created stunning arrangements of white orchids and blue hydrangeas. Caterers prepared gourmet hors d'oeuvres in our kitchen, while bartenders set up stations throughout the property. I walked through each area, checking details and making minor adjustments. The foundation displays were particularly important to me. In the main living room, we created an elegant exhibition about our scholarship program, featuring stories and photos of recipients who had overcome tremendous loss to achieve their educational dreams. Another area showcased our mentorship initiative, where successful professionals who had experienced childhood loss served as mentors to bereaved children. A third display detailed our summer camp program, which provided therapeutic recreation for children processing grief. "The displays look perfect," said Emma, our foundation director. "They tell the story without being heavy-handed." "That's exactly what I wanted," I replied. "This isn't about eliciting pity. It's about showing how loss can be transformed into something meaningful." As noon approached, I retreated to my bedroom to prepare myself. My stylist had selected a sapphire blue gown that complemented my eyes and contrasted beautifully with my honey blonde hair. As she worked, styling my hair into an elegant updo, I found myself thinking about my mother. "She would have been proud of you," Michael said, seeming to read my thoughts as he entered the room, already handsome in his tuxedo. "I hope so," I said softly. "Sometimes I wonder what she would think of all this." "She would think her daughter is remarkable," he said, kissing my forehead carefully to avoid disturbing my makeup. "Because you are." At 3 o'clock, I met with our security team for a final briefing. We had hired additional staff for the event, both for general security and to manage the flow of guests through the property. "Miss Sullivan," the head of security said, "you mentioned there are 2 guests who might require special attention, Patricia and Jessica Sullivan." "Yes," I confirmed. "They're not security risks, but I'd like them to be treated with particular courtesy. They're important to the evening." "Understood," he said professionally. "Well, ensure they're well attended to." The irony of arranging special treatment for the women who had treated me so poorly wasn't lost on me, but this night wasn't about pettiness. It was about showing them exactly who I had become, and that required perfect execution. By 5 o'clock, everything was ready. The caterers had prepared exquisite displays of food. Bartenders stood ready at their stations. The string quartet was set up on the terrace. Photographers positioned themselves discreetly to capture the event for press releases. I stood in my office one last time, looking at the photos of my father. "I did it, Dad," I whispered. "I built something good. I wish you could have seen it." Michael found me there, gently placing his hands on my shoulders. "It's almost time," he said. "The first guests will be arriving soon." I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders and turning away from the past to face the future. "I'm ready," I said, taking his arm. We positioned ourselves in the grand entryway, prepared to greet each guest personally. The foundation board members arrived first, followed by major donors and corporate sponsors. Each interaction was warm and genuine, my anxiety about Patricia and Jessica temporarily receding as I focused on the good work the evening would support. The guest list had been carefully crafted to ensure Patricia wouldn't arrive until the event was in full swing. As representatives from a lower-tier sponsor, West Side Luxury Properties would be scheduled to arrive in the second wave of guests, approximately 30 minutes after the event began. At exactly 6:30, the first guests began to arrive. Michael and I stood at the entrance, greeting everyone warmly. The villa looked spectacular, with soft lighting highlighting its architectural features and breathtaking views. Staff circulated with champagne and appetizers as the string quartet played softly in the background. "You've created something magical here," whispered Catherine, one of our major donors, as she entered. "Both the foundation and this event." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched by her words. As 7 o'clock approached, I felt a flutter of nervousness. According to the guest list, Westside Luxury Properties representatives would be arriving any minute. Michael squeezed my hand, his silent support grounding me. "Whatever happens," he murmured, "I'm right here." I nodded gratefully, my eyes fixed on the entrance. The moment that had been years in the making was finally at hand. At precisely 7:05 p.m., Patricia Sullivan walked through our front door. She looked older than I remembered, her blonde hair now highlighted to cover the gray, her face showing signs of stress despite careful makeup. She wore an expensive-looking black dress that couldn't quite hide the fact that it was at least a few seasons old. She glanced around appreciatively at our home, clearly impressed, but unaware of whose property she was admiring. When her eyes finally landed on me, the recognition wasn't immediate. I had changed significantly from the grieving, struggling young woman she had last seen, now elegantly dressed, poised, and successful. The moment her brain made the connection was visible on her face. Her expression shifted from professional pleasantness to shock, her eyes widening and mouth falling slightly open. The champagne glass she was holding slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "Amber," she gasped, her voice barely audible. "Patricia," I replied calmly. "Welcome to my home." A staff member immediately appeared to clean up the broken glass, but Patricia seemed frozen in place, unable to process what was happening. Several guests glanced curiously in our direction, but the event was too well orchestrated to be derailed by one awkward encounter. Michael stepped forward smoothly. "I'm Michael Bennett, Amber's husband. You must be Patricia Sullivan from Westside Luxury Properties. We're so pleased you could join us this evening." His polite introduction seemed to snap Patricia back to awareness of her surroundings. She attempted to regain her composure, accepting Michael's handshake automatically. Yes. Thank you for the invitation," she stammered. "I didn't realize. That is, I wasn't aware this was your home, Amber." "It is," I confirmed, my voice steady despite the emotional storm inside me. "Michael and I purchased it last year. Please, enjoy the event. We're raising funds for the Sullivan Family Foundation tonight." The mention of our family name was deliberate, a reminder of what she had tried to erase. Before Patricia could respond, there was a commotion at the door. Jessica had arrived, her entrance deliberately dramatic in a too-tight red dress that stood out among the elegant evening wear of the other guests. Like her mother, she scanned the room with appreciation before her eyes landed on me. Unlike Patricia, her recognition was immediate. "You have got to be kidding me," she said loudly enough for nearby guests to turn. I maintained my composed smile. "Jessica, so glad you could make it." Michael stepped in smoothly once again. guiding a shell-shocked Patricia and fuming Jessica away from the entrance to allow other guests to enter. "Please, help yourselves to champagne," he suggested. "The foundation displays are throughout the main level, and we'll be starting the program in about 30 minutes. As they moved into the main room, I saw Jessica whispering furiously to her mother, both of them shooting glances in my direction. I remained at the entrance, continuing to greet guests, but I could feel their eyes on me throughout the evening. When the formal program began, I took my place at the podium on our terrace, the Pacific Ocean, creating a stunning backdrop as the sun set. 200 guests were seated facing me, including Patricia and Jessica, who had been discreetly placed in the middle of the audience by our event staff. "Good evening, and thank you all for joining us," I began. The Sullivan Family Foundation was born from personal experience. When I was 10 years old, I lost my mother to cancer. At 21, I lost my father to early-onset Alzheimer's. I paused, allowing my gaze to briefly meet Patricia's. In the aftermath of those losses, I learned that while grief can isolate us, it doesn't have to define us. Every child who loses a parent deserves support, guidance, and the opportunity to build a meaningful future. As I continued my speech, outlining the foundation's achievements and future goals, I could see Patricia shifting uncomfortably in her seat. Jessica remained stone-faced, arms crossed defensively across her chest. "Success isn't just measured in dollars," I said, approaching the conclusion of my remarks. "It's measured in resilience, in the ability to transform pain into purpose, in the courage to build something new when what you loved has been taken from you." The audience applauded enthusiastically as I finished speaking. During the mingling that followed, I noticed Patricia and Jessica attempting to make an early exit. With a subtle nod to our security team, they were politely intercepted. "Miss Sullivan was hoping to speak with you, both privately before you leave." The security manager informed them smoothly. "If you'd follow me to her study." I met Michael's eyes across the room, and he nodded encouragingly. This was the moment I had been both dreading and anticipating, a direct confrontation after years of silence. In my study, surrounded by the photos of my father that I had carefully arranged, I waited. When the door opened and Patricia and Jessica entered, their expressions were a mixture of discomfort and defensiveness. "Quite a show you've put on," Patricia said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "I had no idea you'd done so well for yourself." "That was rather the point," I replied. "You made it very clear I wasn't worth keeping in your lives." "I wanted you to see exactly what you discarded," Jessica scoffed. "So this whole thing is just some elaborate revenge scheme?" "Pathetic." "No, Jessica. The foundation is genuine. The work we do matters. This home, my company, my marriage, they're all real. The only theatrical element was ensuring you would walk into it all unsuspecting, the way you once orchestrated my removal from my own family." Patricia's eyes darted to the photos of my father. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I caught a glimpse of something like regret. "Richard was very ill," she said softly. "We did what was best for him. You did what was best for yourselves." I corrected. "You isolated him from his daughter, manipulated him when he was vulnerable, and took everything he had intended for me." "We were his family too," Jessica interjected angrily. "Yes, you were," I agreed. "And there could have been room for all of us. But you made it clear from day one that wasn't what you wanted." I moved to my desk and retrieved a folder, placing it on the table between us. "I know what happened to my father's money," I said. "The failed investments, the extravagant spending, the mounting debts. I know you're struggling now, that you came to Los Angeles hoping for a fresh start." Patricia paled. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter how I know," I interrupted. "What matters is that I do." "So what now?" Jessica demanded. "You've made your point. You're rich and successful, and we're not. Is that supposed to hurt us? Make us sorry?" "No," I said truthfully. "This isn't about hurting you. It's about me finally being seen not as the inconvenient stepdaughter you wanted to erase, but as someone who survived what you did and built something meaningful despite it." Patricia looked at me with new eyes, as if truly seeing me for the first time. What do you want from us, Amber? Nothing, I replied. I stopped wanting anything from either of you a long time ago. The room fell silent as the weight of my words settled around us. The silence in my study stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths. Finally, Patricia broke it, her voice lacking its usual confident edge. "You've done well for yourself," she said, gesturing vaguely at the room. "The house. The evidence of my success. Your father would have been proud." "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't pretend you care what my father would have thought. You took every opportunity to separate us when he was alive. Jessica, never one for subtlety. Cut in. So what? You got us here to gloat? To show off your perfect life? Congratulations, you win. Is that what you want to hear?" I studied them both, Patricia with her careful facade of dignified remorse, Jessica with her angry defensiveness. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than the villains who had loomed so large in my memories. "This isn't about winning," I said finally. "It was never a competition until you made it one." I walked to the window, looking out at the guests enjoying the gala. My foundation staff were connecting with donors, sharing stories of the children wed helped. Michael was chatting with a group of business leaders, occasionally glancing toward my study with concern. "The truth is, seeing you tonight brought me clarity," I continued. "For years, I fantasized about this moment, about showing you what it achieved despite your efforts to break me. But now that you're here, I realize something." I turned back to face them. "Your opinion of me doesn't matter anymore. It hasn't for a long time." Patricia's expression flickered with something like disappointment. "Then why arrange all this?" "Because I needed to see that for myself," I answered honestly. "I needed to look you both in the eye and know that I am finally free of needing your approval or fearing your rejection." I moved to my desk and retrieved another folder, different from the one containing their financial information. "I know you're struggling financially," I said, placing the folder on the table. "The real estate market is difficult to break into, especially at the luxury level. And social media influence is more competitive than ever." Jessica's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm offering you a one-time financial settlement," I said calmly. "Not out of obligation, but as a final closing of accounts between us." I opened the folder to reveal a legal document and a cashier's check for $200,000. "This comes with conditions," I continued as they stared at the check in shock. "First, this is a one-time payment. There will never be more. Second, you'll sign this agreement acknowledging that this settles any perceived claims you might feel entitled to regarding my father's estate. And third, after tonight, we will have no further contact." Patricia reached for the check with trembling fingers. "Why would you do this? Not for you," I said truthfully. "For me. To close this chapter completely, with no loose ends. The foundation that bears my father's name should help those in need, even those who hurt me," Jessica snorted. "So you get to play the saint? Fine by me. I'll take your guilt money. It's not guilt, Jessica. It's closure. There's a difference." As they reviewed the document, I watched them with a strange sense of detachment. These women had once held such power over me, had shaped so many of my fears and insecurities. Now they just seemed ordinary, flawed people who had made selfish choices and were living with the consequences. "Sign it, or don't," I said. "Either way, we're finished after tonight." Patricia looked up from the document, her eyes searching mine. For what it's worth, I didn't expect Richard's condition to deteriorate so quickly. I thought there would be time to, I don't know, figure things out. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was perhaps as close as Patricia would ever come to acknowledging her role in what happened. "It's not worth much," I replied honestly. "But I appreciate you saying it." They both signed the agreement. As they prepared to leave, Jessica paused at the door. "Your app," she said reluctantly. "The healthcare one. My friend's mother used it during her cancer treatment. She said it made everything more manageable." I nodded, surprised by this small offering. "That's why I created it." "Well, it's good," she said awkwardly, then quickly followed her mother out. I remained in my study for a few minutes after they left, collecting myself before returning to the gala. Looking at the photos of my father, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. "I think we're finally done, Dad," I whispered. When I rejoined the party, Michael was immediately at my side. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low with concern. "I am," I said, realizing with some surprise that it was true. "Better than okay, actually. I feel free." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, speeches, and fundraising success. By the time the last guest departed, the foundation had raised over $2 million for its programs. As the staff cleaned up around us, Michael and I stood on the terrace, looking out at the moonlight dancing on the waves below. "They're gone, you know," he said. "I saw them leave right after they spoke with you. They didn't say goodbye to anyone. They won't be back," I said with certainty. "Do you regret it, giving them the money?" I considered his question carefully. "No, it wasn't for them, it was for me. I needed to end this on my terms, not theirs." Michael wrapped his arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. "I'm proud of you, Amber, not for your success or your foundation, or even for facing them tonight. I'm proud of how you've learned to heal yourself." His words touched something deep within me, a truth I was only now beginning to fully understand. My journey had never really been about proving my worth to Patricia and Jessica. It had been about proving it to myself. In the days that followed, I threw myself into foundation work with renewed focus. We expanded our scholarship program, launched a new grief counseling initiative, and partnered with hospitals to support children with terminally ill parents. 3 months after the gala, I received a brief email from Patricia. It contained only a photo of my father from before his illness, one I had never seen before. He was smiling at the camera, looking younger and happier than I remembered from those final years. No text accompanied the image, no explanation or further communication. I printed the photo and added it to my collection. Not because I had forgiven Patricia some wounds run too deep for complete forgiveness, but because I had learned that healing doesn't require forgetting. It requires integration, weaving the painful parts of our story into the beautiful whole of who we become. My name is Amber Sullivan Bennett. I lost both my parents, was betrayed by my stepfamily, and built a life they never thought possible. But more importantly, I found my way back to myself. Not through revenge, but through purpose. Not through their validation, but through my own. And that, I've learned, is the sweetest victory of all. What about you? Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal or loss? Or found unexpected healing in success? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this message. Remember, sometimes our greatest strength emerges from our deepest wounds. Thank you for listening, and may you find your own path to healing, whatever form it takes.